Hey everyone, this is Fix-A-Lot here. I've got a 1992 Acura NSX that I recently picked up. It's been having some problems with regards to the anti-lock brake system or the ABS system, and there's a problem with regards to the modulator. It's very dirty as far as the fluid is concerned. I'm sure there's other things, bugs and things like that. If you read the forums, there's a lot of information with regards to this, and Warren's done a very good job of outlining it in a written format. I'm going to try to attempt to provide you some guidelines in a video format here. I did buy the kit from Warren. He sent down the O-rings from Canada along with the special grease, so that's all there. He's also provided some detailed instructions. It's just going to require some basic tools, flare nut wrenches, socket wrenches. You'll need a turkey baster here in order to evacuate the dirty fluid that comes out of the reservoir. You're going to need brake clean, and I purchased some inexpensive .4 in order to cycle through the solenoids, and then I'll be filling it up with like an ATE Type 200 or ATE Blue in the final procedure. So here's the front end of the car. Kind of draped it with some towels. Also put on some plastic sheathing on one side here. We don't want to get any brake fluid on the paint, so we want to be careful when we're removing the modulator unit. Here's the ABS unit for 91, 92. The 93s look very similar to this. The reservoir is a little bit different from the 93 onwards, but the rest of the unit looks pretty similar. I've removed the spare tire, and here's the spare tire guard. The first thing I'm going to do is actually remove the spare tire guard. Now, I'm going through the complete procedure of replacing the O-rings and cleaning out the entire system. The other way, like, I don't know if you can kind of see it here, but the fluid is actually very dirty. The design that we have is that a lot of bugs come in from the fan into this area, and through the vent, the bugs actually kind of get up into this reservoir and contaminate the fluid. So periodic flush is needed. So that will certainly help. I'm just going ahead and replacing all the O-rings, cleaning out the entire system and kind of starting fresh. So that's going a little bit further than a flush, but I feel that it's going to hopefully bring the modulator issues to a close. What I'm experiencing in the car is when I hit the brakes, there's a lot of squeaking that's going on. It's the pump actually that's stressing, and it's running for a while. It gets back up to pressure, but in the meantime it makes a lot of noise. The solenoids make noise also, so I'm sure that there's a lot of contamination within the system itself, and that's what I'm aiming to clean up. I'm also going to check the accumulator that's down at the base of this to make sure that it's not ruptured and it's operating properly. I have another one on order, so I may be able to assemble that straight onto it when it comes. But anyway, we're going to go and show you how to do this this complete O-ring, let's say, rebuild procedure. Okay, I wanted to remove the spare tire bar here. That side is relatively easy to get. This side is tough to get to, so there's actually two 10mm bolts per side, and they're only torqued to about 11 to 14 pound-feet. So the torque isn't very high, but you can get to that side. This side you're gonna have to remove the bracket here. I unplugged all of the connections for the solenoids over here on this side. I also label them so I'll know where they go and when they go back. They're basically keyed left and right, and as far as up and down, so it's very difficult to cross them up, but I labeled them nonetheless. Okay, I don't know if you can see this, but I removed another bracket over here in order to get to the last bolt for the spare tire protector here. Anyway, this thing comes out just like this. It's optional whether you remove this now or after the unit is out, but I figured I'd move it now so that I can have better access to the bleeder screw as well as some of the lines here that I'm going to have to eventually remove. You can see the bleed screw here. That is under super high pressure, and what's going to happen is when you crack it open, it's going to bubble first, and then there's going to be fluid coming out. So if you have the Honda bleed tool, which has a reservoir on it, it's a T-handle thing, that's the best, because that's going to keep things from kind of getting all over the place. If you don't have it, you can use this 5/16 square pipe fitting. So this is a 5/16 that I ordered on eBay, and basically it fits right over the top. It's a 3/8 drive. What you do is you crack it open ever so slightly and then tighten it right back up, but not all the way. And then you can use a tube like this, kind of stick it into the top like that, and then have that drain into either a bottle or your drain pan below, and then you crack it open with a pair of vice grips or pliers, and then close it once you've relieved all the pressure. You need all that pressure relieved before you start to disconnect the lines over here, and believe me, it's a lot of pressure. So allow that to bleed out completely, and then go ahead and start working on your lines. The other thing you want to do is to use your turkey baster and drain this completely. Careful not to get any of the fluid anywhere else, but just have kind of a drain pan close by, and then transfer any of the old fluid into a drain pan and then discard it. You're going to want to make sure you wear eye protection as well as gloves through this whole procedure, especially when you're working with brake fluid. In order to get clearance to remove the modulator, you're going to have to remove the cruise control unit. So you want to disconnect the connector over here on the forward side. There's a total of 5 10mm screws, and again, these are torqued to about 14 pound-feet when you reassemble, but you want to remove the cover. There's 2 there, so the cover comes off, and then there's 3 for the base, and then once you undo those, the whole unit will come out. Watch for the drain tube here, which mounts over here, but you just want to move this out of the way and wire it up. Again, keep wearing that eye protection. Once you have the cruise control unit out of the way, these lines here just need to be bent back just a little bit. They're mounted, 4 are mounted vertically and 2 are mounted horizontally. Just be careful not to damage the tips on these things, but once you have them out, they all use like 10mm flare nut wrench. Once you have them all out, just start with the horizontally mounted ones, move them out just a little bit, and then the vertically mounted ones, move these out just a little bit in order to get a little bit of clearance here. You won't be able to drop it down through the bottom because the sway bar as well as the cooling pipe is down there, so you're going to have to bring it up through the top. You should be able to clear the master cylinder. There are 3 bolts, I believe, that mount the unit, and then the whole thing should come up and out. Okay, I'm just about to drop the unit. I've got the last bolt right here. There's a bolt over here, and then there's one bolt that's down here. These bolts are a 14mm, like this. They're torqued on fairly well, and they've got some sort of thread locker on there, so they're going to be a little bit hard to break loose. Then the one down below here is very difficult to get to, but once you get that loose, you get that one, and then finally this one, and then it should let go. Make sure that you undo the clip here for the pressure sensor that's at the bottom of the unit next to the accumulator, and then it should be, you should be able to move it up. You can see I moved some of these lines back so that it gives me a little bit more clearance as I pull this unit up. So this is what it looks like after the unit has been pulled, and here is the unit out of the car. I taped off the connectors here, covered up the inputs for the brake lines, and also the connector on this side here, and then gave it a good cleaning with brake clean. Got all kind of the gunk off of it, front and back. Notice how the harness is mounted here. So when this top unit comes off, you just have to be careful that when it goes back in, there's still the guides in here. There's rubber guides for the harnesses to protect against pinching. You got one coming in the side here, another one side here, and then two here. In order to disconnect the modulator from the pressure switch and the accumulator, as well as the pump down here, there's basically 3 bolts that mount to the bottom, plus the brake line over here. Well, it's basically a sensor for the accumulator area, and then there's a unit. Oh, sorry. It's going to be a unit here, that hose that you're going to have to disconnect, and also a hose here that you're going to have to disconnect, plus the 3, I believe they're 12 millimeter, it could be 14 millimeter bolts, and then this unit will separate from this lower end here. One of the things we want to check on the lower part of the modulator unit is the accumulator, this thing here. So this comes apart, removing 3 10 millimeter bolts. Down here comes apart like this, and then you move these 3 here, and the accumulator will separate. Okay, when you remove the 3 bolts from the top here, this thing just separates. There's a small O-ring here, and what you want to do is test it a couple of ways. One is kind of use a stiff wire. This is just an insulated wire, and you want to kind of push in here, just kind of tap. You want to make sure the membrane is not broken, because this is filled with nitrogen, and there's a diaphragm in here basically that modulates the braking, the ABS system as it operates. So it basically smooths things out. So you don't want that to be ruptured. The other way you can test it is to pour a little bit of brake fluid right into the top here, and see if it seeps in or anything like that. It shouldn't. So if you kind of just bounce it like this, empty it out, put a little bit of brake fluid in there, make sure that it doesn't seep in, then the accumulator is fine. The accumulator is mounted back on. What I did was I removed the bottom bracket here, which mounts the pump. This is the low pressure side of the pump. On the high pressure side, I'm going to drop this low pressure side as well as the high pressure side into some brake fluid, and then hook up the connections here to see if the pump is making any noise. The other thing is these brackets, since over time they get exposed to a lot of brake fluid. These originally came black, and most of the paint's kind of worn off because of the brake fluid attacking it. I'm going to go ahead and sand this down a little bit, wire brush it, sand it, and then apply Plastidip, and then a black finish on it. Beginning disassembly of the modulator, remove the cap and the screen for the For the reservoir, there are 2 Phillips screws inside the reservoir and one here. Remove those, remove the top, and then the top above the solenoids where the wires are here should come up. Here's a look at the master cylinder reservoir after it's been removed. There are 2 O-rings here, and it's very, very dirty underneath here as well as in the channel here and on top. So use a little Scotch-Brite, clean this up, and clean up the area over here. If you want, you can remove the O-rings, clean underneath them, and then put them back on. It is a relatively snug fit going in, and also the screws on the inside are of 2 different sizes. So just note that upon reassembly. For the top of the solenoids, you want to give it a couple of taps here and here with a rubber mallet. Just kind of rock it back and forth, and it should come up like this, exposing the solenoids. Next, you want to carefully remove the plastic cover. There are these little rubber keepers here that are put in place, and they sandwich over the wiring harness. So you just want to open up one side, then kind of squeeze these things together and carefully remove the cover without breaking it, slipping it through. Just be sure to keep hold of these small rubber retainers here. And there you have it. It's exposed. There's going to be a total of 8 hex bolts that need to be removed, and then the solenoid unit can be taken out of the modulator. The 6mm bolts aren't easy to get out. I used a socket 5-inch extension, but was able to remove them. Once you do that, you may need to get in here with a screwdriver with the tip taped up in order not to damage anything, and then just press against this plate, this upper plate, and once you do, it should loosen the solenoids up a little bit such that you can kind of rock it back and forth and then get them pulled out like this. You can see that these solenoids are completely covered with debris, so I'm going to rotate each one of these out of the case, purge them with some brake fluid, putting power to the red and the black outlets on each one of these, and then I'll be able to purge these things out. The most important thing is to get these things cleaned up, the new O-rings installed along with the grease. Now moving on to the valve piston side, there are 4 12mm and 2 14mm that hold these on. They're kind of spring loaded, so when you remove them, they do have the springs. There's O-rings at the base here, so you want to clean this up. This side, as the forums mentioned, do not get that much debris or dirt, as you can see, because it's filtered from the solenoid side. Here's the other side here. Just kind of keep track of how these are mounted, and make sure that you retain the springs. They are of different size. 2 at the end are shorter, the center ones are longer, so just kind of keep track of those, and then remove each of the valves here for cleaning, as well as putting on new O-rings. They are going to be a little bit tight in getting them out, but once you do, then you're going to have to push those back in after you've installed the new seals, or I'm sorry, the new O-rings and the grease. Okay, got all the pieces cleaned up. The base Scotch-Brited down here, the springs cleaned up, the bracketry, all of this hardware is all cleaned up now. One of the things that people miss is on the piston side here, One of my pistons was actually stuck in the down position or closed position, open position, I guess. Anyway, it wasn't popping back like it's supposed to, and that's because there's debris not only inside the spring area that's causing it to stick, as well as the slider. There's also some debris on the plunger. So you want to take this apart. This has a rectangular base here. Put this in a vise very, very lightly. It's plastic. You may want to even cover it a little bit with some tape and then put it in there. The torque on this is very light, 7 pounds, 8 pounds, that kind of thing. So it's very easy to remove. You put that in the base, undo the nut on the top, and then what you'll have is, you know, these pieces that'll come out. You have the washer, the spring, the nut on the top. This plunger comes right out of here, and this area down here needs to be cleaned up, as well as the plunger itself. It's going to have some debris within and near the O-rings. I don't have, or the kit doesn't come with replacement O-rings here, but you can pretty much reuse them as long as you don't scratch them up or anything. Anyway, you want to clean this up. Put a little bit of grease on the plunger. Also put a little bit of grease on the surface where this slides. This hub inside slides up and down. So you want to put a little bit of grease, just a light amount, so that it slides up and down freely. Assemble on the spring and the washer and the nut. And what you should have is a unit that doesn't stick at the top. This one is a little bit sticky. I just removed it, but it should, you know, basically go through its range of motion without any stickiness, and that will ensure that you're not compromising the analog brake system and its performance. Now the assembly on the valve piston side. You can see the new O-rings installed with a little bit of grease around them. This is the 24.5, and then this is 25 millimeter one, and then you have 31 millimeter O-rings here up on top. You want to fill the reservoir, each one of these chambers, basically up to the first level. It's about an inch up. So you want to fill those with your brake fluid, .4, and then drop these in. And you're going to have to push them down. Then, you know, the spring goes up on top, and these bolt down with these bolts here. The smaller ones are at about 12 pound-feet, and then the larger ones are at about 16 pound-feet. Go ahead and assemble it on this side, and then we'll move over to the solenoids. You can see that the piston side now is fully installed. Bolts torqued down. You have to be careful when you're putting this on because you filled it up partially with brake fluid. Some of it's going to shoot out, so you want to shield it over here on this side in order to catch some of it that shoots out. One of the tools that's very helpful is this pick. You can kind of see it's slightly angled. It's a Craftsman tool, but other cool tool companies do sell this. It's really easy for getting in here without damaging the part and pulling off the O-ring. So this works out very, very well. When installing the solenoid assembly, make sure that you can actually push these down by hand, each one of them just a little bit, and then bolt down the hex bolts here to, well, they were at around 20 or 22 pound-feet. They were pretty tight, and then thread on the cover after that. Solenoids are all bolted down. Just make sure that you line up the wires here with the plastic cover, just to make sure that everything goes out in the same direction that it had, and make sure that you have these little covers over each one. When the top slides in, just make sure that there's a little bit of grease on these two here. They're going to slide into the chamber, and you just want to line it up and then kind of press straight down and wiggle it kind of back and forth and set it. And then once you have this set, you put the reservoir back on. Again, a little bit of grease on the new O-rings here, and just remember that the screws are 2 different sizes within the reservoir. Here's the unit all back together again, ready for installation into the vehicle. I'm going to do some touch-up paint in the compartment. There's an area, or there's a dowel back here that kind of scratches up the car when you remove it. Make sure you tape this up as you're installing it back into the car, and then remove the tape so that you can locate the dowel in order to put in the rest of the bolts. The unit is, 30 to 40 pounds, so it's very difficult to do when you just have basically 2 hands. Touch-up paint does wonders. Here's the unit installed. Always start with the brake lines furthest to the back and then move forward. Do the vertically mounted ones first, then the horizontal mounted ones. Then install the cruise control. Don't forget the electrical plug in the back. I'll be doing these next, the ones in the front. Now, if you had any doubts about the spare tire guard being off the unit, it's especially useful when you're doing the installation because you can get to all the brake lines pretty easily. Unit is completely installed. I got the rear bolts for the spare tire guard tightened from underneath the car, just lifted up one side and got to that. Made sure all the connections for the cruise control as well as all the connections for the ABS system are completely done. You're going to have to fill up both reservoirs. Make sure that you bleed through the ABS module and all 4 corners. You're probably going to have to go through this twice or maybe even 3 times in order to get all the bubbles out. But just be careful with regards to the main bleeder here for the module. It is under high pressure, and always wear safety glasses. That's about it. I hope this helps to solve some of the issues with regards to the early ABS system.